They signed me into a nursing home on my retirement day. Then the bank called my daughter-in-law. On the morning I retired after 31 years at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, my son backed a moving truck into my driveway before I'd even finished my coffee. I stood on the porch in my old Navy Federal robe, watching two men I'd never seen before carry a dolly toward my front door. My son Michael got out of his pickup, sunglasses on, phone already in his hand. Behind him, my daughter-in-law Vanessa stepped out of her SUV, holding a folder against her chest, the way lawyers hold folders in movies, like it was armor. "Dad," Michael said, "we need to talk before the movers start." "Movers?" I repeated. "Whose movers?" Vanessa smiled the way she always smiled at me, warm on the outside, calculated underneath, like a smile that had been rehearsed in a mirror that morning. "We found you the most beautiful place, Robert, Sunrise Meadows. You're going to love it." I looked past her at the moving truck, at the men already lifting furniture pads out of the back, at my grandson Tyler, 7 years old, hanging halfway out the SUV window. "Grandpa, can I have your room in the new house?" he shouted. "Dad says we're moving in as soon as you go." I didn't answer him. I was still looking at the folder in Vanessa's hands. "What new house?" I asked. Michael wouldn't look at me directly. He never could when he was about to do something he knew was wrong. Even as a boy, he'd stare at his shoes right before a lie. He was staring at his shoes now. "This one," he said quietly, "ours now. We already closed on the paperwork last week." I felt the porch tilt slightly under my feet, though it hadn't moved an inch. "Dad, it's for your own good," Vanessa said, stepping closer, holding the folder open like she was handing me a menu instead of my own eviction. "You're 67. You live alone. What if you fell? What if something happened and nobody knew for days? Sunrise Meadows has nurses on staff, bingo nights. It's really quite lovely." "I built a boat in that garage," I said. "I raised my son in that house. I buried my wife's ashes under the dogwood tree in that backyard." "And we'll visit the tree," Michael said. "Like that solves something." I looked at the folder, at the signature line already flagged with a little yellow arrow sticker, the kind real estate agents use. My name was already typed at the bottom. All that was missing was my hand. "You already signed something," I said slowly. "Whose name is on that deed?" Vanessa's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes did. "We had power of attorney drawn up. Just a precaution. Your memory's been slipping, Robert. You forgot Tyler's birthday last month." I hadn't forgotten Tyler's birthday. I'd had gallbladder surgery that week, and Michael knew it. But I didn't say that. I was still looking at the word power of attorney sitting on a page I had never signed. "I never gave anyone power of attorney," I said. Michael finally looked up, and for just a second, one single second, I saw something honest in his face. Fear. Not fear of losing me, fear of what would happen to him if this didn't go the way Vanessa had planned. "Dad," he said, "please don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked at my son, 38 years old, standing in the driveway of the house I'd worked double shifts to pay off, asking me to make it easier for him to take it. "Sign it, Grandpa," Tyler yelled cheerfully from the car window, clapping like this was a birthday party. "Then we get the pool." There was no pool. There had never been talk of a pool, which meant Michael and Vanessa had already been planning renovations to a house that wasn't legally theirs yet. I looked at the movers standing awkwardly by the truck, waiting for someone to tell them whether to start. Then I looked at Vanessa's folder one more time, and I did something that surprised all three of us. I smiled. "Give me the pen," I said. 6 weeks earlier. My name is Robert Hale. Everyone who's known me more than a week calls me Bob. I spent 31 years as a machinist at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, repairing the guts of ships most people will never see the inside of. Before that, I served 8 years in the Navy myself, which is where I met my wife Carol, at a diner outside Portsmouth, where she worked the counter and gave me extra pie because, in her words, "You looked like a man who needed kindness more than he needed dessert." We were married 41 years. She died 5 years ago in March of ovarian cancer that the doctors caught 11 months too late. I still keep her reading glasses on the nightstand. I know that probably sounds foolish for a man my age. I don't especially care. Michael is our only child. Growing up, he used to sit on an overturned bucket in the garage and hand me tools while I rebuilt engines on the weekends. He knew a torque wrench from a ratchet by the time he was 6. I thought, back then, that we'd always understand each other in that quiet, tool-passing kind of way men sometimes love each other, without needing to say it out loud. After Carol's diagnosis, I took every overtime shift the shipyard would give me. Insurance covered some of it, not all. I sold my father's old .30-06 rifle, sold my motorcycle, cashed out most of a small stock account I'd been building since the 80s. I never told Michael the specifics. I didn't want him carrying guilt over medical bills that weren't his to carry. When Carol passed, Michael was 33, married 2 years to Vanessa, and running a small HVAC installation company he'd started with money I'd helped him borrow against my own retirement account. I never asked for it back. I told him, same as I told him about the fishing boat I gave him at 25, just build a good life, son. That's payment enough. Vanessa, I never fully warmed to, though God knows I tried. She was sharp, ambitious, the kind of woman who could work a room in 5 minutes and have everyone believing she was their closest friend. At first, she was kind to me in a way that felt sincere. Sunday dinners, questions about Carol. She'd ask to see old photos. Then, slowly, the comments started. This house is a lot for one person to keep up, Robert. Have you thought about downsizing? People your age shouldn't be climbing ladders to clean gutters. Property values in this neighborhood are incredible right now. Just saying. Small pebbles, never a boulder. That's how it always starts, I've since learned. Not with a shove, but with pebbles thrown so gently, you convince yourself you imagined the sting. Michael began repeating her words like they were his own thoughts. Dad, maintaining a house this size at your age is a lot. He'd never said anything like that to me before, Vanessa. I told myself he was just worried about me. Retired men learn to tell themselves a lot of comforting lies. About 2 months before my retirement date, Michael and Vanessa started visiting more, bringing dinner, mowing my lawn without asking. Vanessa brought a lasagna one Saturday, first home-cooked meal she'd ever brought me in 11 years of marriage to my son. I wanted to believe it meant something good. I let myself believe it, the way a lonely man will believe almost anything if it's wrapped in enough kindness. One evening, helping me clean out the garage, Michael found my old Navy sea bag stuffed behind a shelf. He held it up, grinning. You kept this? Carried it through 8 years and 2 oceans, I said. Man doesn't throw that away. For a moment, just a moment, he looked at me the way he used to look at me on that overturned bucket in the garage, 40 years younger, still trusting me with everything. Then, without looking up from the sea bag, he asked, Hey, where do you keep your important paperwork? Deed? Insurance? That kind of thing? I should have heard the seam in his voice. I didn't. I laughed it off, told him he was planning my funeral early. He laughed too, a half-second too late, and the moment passed. It wasn't the last time he'd ask. A week later, my neighbor Walt Higgins, a retired Navy chief I'd known almost 20 years, ever since he moved in 3 houses down with his wife Dottie, stopped me while I was checking my mailbox. You got a minute, Bob? Always, Walt. He scratched at his beard the way he did when something was sitting uneasy in him. I've seen your boy and his wife over here a lot lately. Saw them out back last week with a tape measure, measuring the lot line, near as I could tell. Probably planning something for my retirement party, I said. Walt didn't smile. Maybe? You trust them, Bob? He's my son, Walt. That's not what I asked. I didn't have an answer for him that day. He clapped my shoulder before he walked off and said, the way old sailors do, you ever need anything, you call me. Anytime, day or night. I thought he was just being neighborly. He was trying to warn me. 3 weeks before my retirement, a certified letter arrived from a law office downtown, Whitfield and Associates. I set it on the kitchen counter, told myself I'd deal with it after retirement, when I had more time to think straight. It sat there 12 days, unopened, buried under grocery receipts. That was, without question, the single biggest mistake of the entire ordeal, not opening that envelope the day it arrived. I want anyone listening to this to hear that clearly. If a certified letter shows up from a law office, open it that day. Don't let it wait. Mine almost cost me everything. Meanwhile, unknown to me, Michael's HVAC company was drowning. He'd taken on 3 large commercial installation contracts the year before, expanded too fast, hired 6 new technicians, financed 2 new service trucks. Then one of his biggest commercial clients, a hotel chain, filed for bankruptcy, owing him almost $190,000. Suppliers started demanding cash on delivery. Payroll became something he dreaded every other Friday. Vanessa, I later learned, had been the one pushing hardest for a solution. And the only asset large enough to solve it was a fully paid-off 4-bedroom house on a half-acre lot in a neighborhood that had tripled in value since I bought it back in 1994. My house. Of course, I knew none of this at the time. Whenever Michael visited, he smiled. Whenever Vanessa hugged me goodbye, I hugged her back and thought, foolishly, that the family I'd been missing since Carol died was finally coming home to me. 2 weeks before my retirement, Vanessa suggested throwing me a party at the house. The whole neighborhood, Robert. You've earned it. 31 years, Michael agreed enthusiastically. Tyler and my granddaughter Sophie, 10 years old, started making decorations, taping paper streamers to the ceiling fan, drawing a banner that read, "World's Best Grandpa" in glitter glue. I should have felt only joy watching them. Instead, some old instinct, the same instinct that once told me an engine was about to seize before the gauges ever showed it, kept whispering that something underneath all this kindness didn't sound right. I ignored it. I wanted, so badly, to be wrong. The morning of my retirement, the same morning I described at the start of this story, I found out exactly how right that instinct had been. Standing on my porch with the moving truck idling in the driveway, I looked at the folder in Vanessa's hands, the yellow arrow sticker on the signature line, my grandson cheering for a swimming pool that didn't exist yet, and I said, "Give me the pen." Vanessa's whole posture relaxed. She handed me a silver pen with a satisfied little smile, the kind of smile you give when you believe you've already won. I signed every page, slowly, neatly, the way I sign every document, the way 31 years of shipyard paperwork trains a man to sign things. Michael actually looked stunned. You're really signing?" "You asked me to," I said. "I heard you." I handed the folder back. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then I turned, walked into the house I'd lived in for 29 years, picked up the single suitcase I had quietly packed the night before, not the one Vanessa expected to pack for me, mind you, my own, and walked back out onto the porch. I looked at the dogwood tree in the side yard, where Carol's ashes had been scattered 5 years earlier. I looked at the pencil marks on the hallway doorframe, where I'd measured Michael's height every August, from age 4 to 17, still faintly visible if you knew where to look. Then I looked at my son. "You have no idea what you just did," I told him. He blinked, uncertain, already sensing something wasn't landing the way he'd planned. "Dad, we're doing right by you." "We'll see," I said. And I walked to my truck and drove away, leaving the moving crew standing confused in the driveway, and my grandson still asking, from the back seat of Vanessa's SUV, when the pool was going in. I want to be honest about something. I cried in that truck, about a half-mile down the road, pulled onto the shoulder with both hands on the wheel. Not because I'd lost the house, because my son had looked into my eyes while helping his wife take it from me, and felt almost nothing. I gave myself 5 minutes. Then I wiped my face with a shop rag from the glove box, the same kind I'd used at the shipyard for 31 years, and I drove 20 minutes to a home 2 suites near the naval base, the kind of extended stay place with a little kitchenette and a desk by the window. I unpacked exactly 3 things: my blood pressure medication, a framed photo of Carol from our wedding day, and a small leather address book I'd kept since the Navy, full of names, numbers, and people I trusted. The next morning, before sunrise, I made coffee in the little kitchenette and opened that address book. The first name I called was Harold Whitfield, the very attorney whose certified letter had been sitting unopened on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks. "Robert Hale," he said, picking up on the second ring. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know," I admitted. "I should have opened your letter sooner." "You should have," he agreed, not unkindly. "Can you come in this morning?" I was in his office by 9. He took one look at my face and set down his coffee. "What happened?" So I told him everything: the moving truck, the power of attorney I never signed, the folder with the pre-flagged signature line, the pool that didn't exist. Harold Whitfield removed his glasses slowly, the way a man does when he's genuinely disturbed by something. "Robert, That certified letter I sent, it was to inform you that Carol's brother, your late brother-in-law Daniel, passed away in Arizona 4 months ago. I sat up straighter. Daniel and Carol hadn't spoken much in later years, a falling out over their mother's estate decades earlier that never fully healed, but Carol had always kept a soft spot for him. Daniel left no children, Harold continued, no living spouse. He named Carol as his sole beneficiary in a will drafted 11 years ago and never updated it. Since Carol predeceased him, under the terms of the will and Virginia probate law, the estate passes to Carol's surviving spouse. I stared at him. Me? You, Harold said. Robert, Daniel built and sold 2 self-storage facilities in Scottsdale over the last 20 years. The estate, after taxes, after debts, is worth just over $3 million. I actually laughed, not because it was funny, because my mind simply refused to process the number sitting next to everything that had happened that morning. There's something else, Harold said, sliding a second folder across his desk. Robert, do you remember about 12 years ago, you and Carol came in here after your neighbors, the Higgins, went through that terrible dispute with their son over an inheritance? I did remember, vaguely. Carol had insisted we get our affairs in order properly, her words. I'd signed a stack of papers that day, mostly because she asked me to. The way a man signs things his wife tells him matter. You created a revocable trust, Harold said. Carol's idea, she specifically wanted a clause protecting the house from being transferred without independent legal review. A safeguard in case, in her words at the time, anyone in the family ever tries to take advantage of Robert when he's older. I sat there in that office chair feeling the ground tilt under me for the second time in 24 hours, except this time, it was tilting in my favor. Robert, Harold said gently, the house you signed away this morning was titled in the name of the Hale Family Revocable Trust. Michael and Vanessa's power of attorney, the one you say you never signed, legally cannot transfer trust property. Whatever document you signed on that porch this morning is not worth the paper it's printed on. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Carol protected me, I finally said. Even now? Harold smiled, just slightly. She always did plan further ahead than the rest of us. That same afternoon, I met with my financial advisor, Denise Okafor, who had managed what remained of my retirement accounts since shortly after Carol's death. When I told her what had happened, she pulled up my account summary and turned the monitor toward me. Robert, listen to me, she said. You were never in danger of needing anyone's charity. Between your Navy pension, your shipyard pension, Social Security, and your investment income, you were already set to live comfortably for the rest of your life. Now with the inheritance, you don't need to worry about money again, not once. I hadn't lost my future that morning. I'd only for a few hours believed I had. Now, when people imagine revenge, they usually picture something loud. Shouting, courtrooms, somebody in handcuffs. In my experience, real consequences rarely arrive that way. They arrive quietly, like a crack spreading through a foundation, invisible for weeks, until one morning the whole structure starts to lean. 2 weeks after I checked into that extended stay hotel, I rented a small furnished apartment overlooking the Elizabeth River. 1 bedroom, a narrow balcony just wide enough for 2 folding chairs. I wasn't hiding, I was healing, the way Harold Whitfield kept insisting I let the law do its work, instead of doing anything rash myself. Walt Higgins kept me updated on the old neighborhood, not because I asked, but because news travels fast on a quiet street. They started renovations already, he told me over coffee one Saturday. New kitchen, contractors in and out every day since you left. That was fast, I said. Bob, Walt said, I've never seen anybody move that fast into another man's grief. Michael and Vanessa posted photos online. New granite countertops. A staged listing photo of their backyard, the dogwood tree cropped mostly out of frame. Friends flooded the comments with congratulations. I looked at it exactly once and closed my phone. Some things are not worth watching twice. About 3 weeks in, Michael called. I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won. Dad, quick question, he said, his voice thinner than usual. Do you happen to have the original survey for the property? Why do you need that? The bank's asking for extra documentation. Bank? I asked. I thought you already owned the house outright. A pause. We're refinancing. Just cash flow stuff for the business. I let the silence sit there a moment. Michael, I said finally, you might want to talk to a lawyer before you go any further with that refinance. What's that supposed to mean? It means what it means, I said, and hung up. That afternoon, Harold called to tell me Michael's mortgage lender had rejected the loan application outright. The title company had discovered the property was held in an irrevocable trust, and the power of attorney Michael submitted had no legal standing whatsoever. Michael and Vanessa did not, and never had, legally owned that house, which meant every dollar they'd already spent on granite countertops and stage photography had been spent renovating a home that still, in every legal sense, belonged to me. The cracks widened from there. A week later, Walt called again. You sitting down, Bob? Always a good sign when you ask that. Sheriff's deputy served papers at your old place this morning. 2 of them, actually. Vanessa looked ready to spit nails. Harold filled in the rest. 2 of Michael's equipment suppliers had filed civil claims for unpaid invoices. The IRS had flagged unpaid payroll taxes going back 9 months. And now, with the refinance collapsed, Michael had no way to cover any of it. I felt something I hadn't expected to feel through all of this. Not satisfaction exactly, but a kind of grim, sad clarity. My son hadn't tried to take my house because he thought I couldn't manage on my own. He'd taken it because he was drowning, and he'd decided, somewhere along the way, that my dignity was an acceptable price for staying afloat. One evening, driving past my old street just to see the dogwood tree from the car window, I saw Michael and Vanessa on the front porch, screaming at each other loud enough that I could hear fragments even with my windows up. You told me the bank already approved it, Vanessa shouted. They changed their minds, Michael yelled back. What do you want from me? Through the front window, I could see Sophie and Tyler standing frozen in the hallway, watching the way children always watch, quietly, and remembering everything. I drove away before either of them noticed me. Some moments don't belong to anyone but the people inside them. That night, my granddaughter Sophie called me. Not Michael, not Vanessa, Sophie. Grandpa, she said, her voice small. Mom says we can't come see you anymore. I know, sweetheart. I miss you. I miss you too. A pause. Are you mad at us? No, baby. Never at you. I didn't know, she said quietly. I thought you wanted to move. Children believe whatever adults tell them, right up until the day life teaches them otherwise. I love you, Sophie, I told her. I love you too, Grandpa. Another pause, longer this time. Is it supposed to make you cry, growing up? I closed my eyes. No, sweetheart. Growing up is supposed to remind you who's grateful you're still here. A month after I left, Harold called me back into his office one final time. He laid a thick envelope on his desk. This is the last of it, he said, sliding it toward me. Inside were copies of Michael's business filings, the failed refinance application, and the civil suits, none of which belonged to me, all of which explained, in cold financial language, exactly what had driven my son to that driveway 6 weeks earlier. There's a letter here too, Harold said. From you, if you want to send it. Nothing threatening, nothing emotional, just facts. Sometimes that's the only thing that reaches a man who's convinced himself he had no other choice. I read it over. Then I signed it, and Harold mailed it to Michael that afternoon. 3 days later, my phone rang 11 times before noon. I let every call go to voicemail. Then came the text. Dad, we need to talk. Not how are you, not can we talk, just we need to talk. The same tone he'd used the morning he asked me to sign my own house away. I didn't answer that day. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't reacting to my son's timeline. I was simply living inside my own. 2 evenings later, Walt showed up at my apartment carrying 2 fishing rods. Figured you could use the water, he said. We sat on a public dock near the marina for an hour without catching a single thing. Sometimes old men don't need conversation, just company. Eventually, Walt broke the silence. Michael stopped by my place yesterday. Asked if I'd heard from you. What'd you tell him? Told him if he wanted to find his father, he should have thought about that before he tried to take his father's house. Walt shrugged. I've buried too many old Navy friends, Bob. Learned one thing from every funeral. You only get so many chances to do right by the people who raised you. That weekend, something happened I hadn't expected. Sophie showed up at my apartment door alone, Walt's wife Dottie having driven her over after Sophie begged for days. The moment I opened the door, she threw both arms around my waist so tight I nearly lost my balance. "I'm sorry, Grandpa." "For what, sweetheart? None of this is yours to carry." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her backpack, a crayon drawing of our old backyard, the dogwood tree, the tire swing I'd hung for her the summer she turned 6. Across the top, in careful 10-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "I miss home. Not the house. Home." Children understand that difference better than most adults ever learn to. "You can keep it up on your wall," she said. "I'll treasure it," I told her, and I meant it with my whole chest. Before Dottie drove her back, Sophie asked me the question only a child would think to ask. "If Dad says sorry, will you come back?" I thought about it honestly before I answered. Sometimes saying sorry fixes things, sweetheart, and sometimes a person has to become someone different before sorry means anything at all. She nodded slowly, like she was filing that away for later. "I think Dad's trying," she said. "So am I told her. The next morning, Michael showed up at my apartment door. He looked like a man who'd aged 5 years and 6 weeks. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his usually pressed work shirts replaced with something wrinkled and slept in. "I can come back later," he offered. "No," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." He sat across from me at my small kitchen table. The same man who 6 weeks earlier had asked me to sign away my life's work, now looking profoundly uncomfortable, sitting in the modest apartment that life had become. "I read everything Harold sent," he said. "I didn't know about the trust. I swear I didn't know Mom set it up like that." "I know," I said. "Neither did I, honestly, until Harold reminded me." He pulled a folder from his bag, not the smooth, professional folder Vanessa had carried onto my porch, but a battered manila one, edges soft from handling. Inside were copies of old bills, receipts, financial statements from years back. "I went through your old filing cabinet before everything," he admitted. "I found Mom's hospital bills. I found the receipt for your motorcycle, your father's rifle." His hands were shaking. "You told me insurance covered it all. It didn't, did it?" I stayed quiet. "You sold everything," he said, voice breaking, "so I could keep the business afloat those first 2 years, and you never once told me." "Parents aren't supposed to make their children carry debts they never asked to carry," I said. He put his face in his hands for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I don't recognize the man I became, Dad." "Neither do I said honestly. "But I recognize the boy who used to hand me wrenches on that overturned bucket. I have to believe he's still in there somewhere." He reached into his bag one more time and pulled out an old photo album, one Carol had put together years before she got sick. Every birthday, every school play, every fishing trip. On the last page, in her handwriting, she'd written, "Take care of each other after I'm gone. Love is the only inheritance worth fighting for." Michael stared at those words like he'd never seen them before. "I never saw this." "You weren't ready to," I said. "Until now, maybe." Before he left, he stood by the door a long moment. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I know. I just wanted you to know I'm ashamed." I believed him. Not because he cried, not because he apologized in the right words. Because for the first time in years, standing in my doorway, he wasn't asking me for a single thing. Michael didn't come back the next day, or the day after. For the first time in a long time, he let something stay unresolved instead of rushing to fix it overnight. That, more than anything, told me something in him had genuinely shifted. Sometimes distance isn't punishment. Sometimes it's respect, finally learned. A week later, Sophie called again. "Dad wants to know if you'll meet us Saturday. At the cemetery, for Grandma." Carol's birthday was that Saturday. She would have been 64. I arrived to find Michael already standing at her grave, Vanessa a few steps behind him, Sophie and Tyler holding a small bouquet of white lilies neither of them had been asked to bring. Nobody spoke at first. The silence didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest. "I've been coming here every Saturday since I left your apartment," Michael finally said. "Your mother would have dragged you here herself, eventually," I said. He almost smiled. "She probably would have." Vanessa stepped forward then, and for the first time in 11 years, I heard something in her voice that wasn't performance. "I owe you an apology, Robert. No excuses. I looked at that house like it was the solution to every problem we had, and I convinced myself we deserved it. I taught my kids to value property over people, and that's on me, not Michael, me. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply told the truth, plainly, without dressing it up. That mattered more than any speech she could have rehearsed. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, a deed transfer he'd had drawn up, formally relinquishing any claim to the property, permanent and notarized. "I know this doesn't fix anything," he said, holding it out, "but maybe someday I can deserve being your son again." I didn't take it. "Dad, it's yours. I don't deserve—" "No," I said gently. "I already said my goodbye to that house, Michael. It did its job for 29 years. It's somebody else's turn to fill it with memories now." A month later, I sold it. Not to strangers chasing an investment, but to a young Navy family with a toddler who ran laughing through the backyard during the walkthrough and stopped beneath the dogwood tree, looking up at the branches like she already understood something sacred was there. "We'll take good care of it," the mother told me. Somehow, I believed her completely. With part of the proceeds, along with Daniel's inheritance, I bought a smaller house on Chesapeake Bay. One story, a workshop out back, a dock just big enough for one boat. Exactly enough. No empty rooms. No echoes of what I'd lost. Harold helped me rebuild my estate plan. I set up an education trust for Sophie and Tyler, untouchable by anyone but them, released only for college, trade school, or starting a small business, and only after they completed a basic financial literacy course each year until they turned 25. I also funded a small scholarship in Carol's name at the community college where she'd once dreamed of taking night classes in nursing before life got in the way. Michael never asked me for a dime, not once, in all the months that followed. Instead, he started showing up on Saturday mornings. Sometimes we fished. Sometimes we rebuilt an old engine in my new workshop, same as when he was small, except now it was his hands doing most of the work, and mine doing the watching. Slowly, very slowly, something that resembled trust began finding its way back between us. Not because he was chasing forgiveness anymore, but because he'd finally stopped expecting it as a reward. Vanessa started volunteering at a food bank on Wednesdays. She never posted about it online. I only found out because Walt mentioned it, the way real change tends to travel quietly, without an audience. One evening, nearly a year after that morning on my porch, Michael and I sat on my new dock, watching the sun go down over the bay. "I still think about that day," he admitted. "When you said I had no idea what I'd done, I remember. I thought you meant the money, the house." He shook his head slowly. "You weren't talking about either of those things, were you?" "No," I said. "I was talking about us." He was quiet a long moment. "When I forced you to sign those papers, I didn't just take a house. I broke something between a father and his son." I put a hand on his shoulder. "And rebuilding that," I told him, "takes a great deal longer than breaking it ever did. If you've stayed with me this long, here's what I hope you carry away from my story. A house can be replaced. Money, even a fortune like the one Daniel left me, can be earned or lost and earned again. Even a relationship broken as badly as mine and my son's was can, sometimes, be rebuilt, one Saturday morning at a time. But respect is a choice a person makes every single day, not a debt they're owed simply for sharing your blood. If your parents are still here, call them today. If you've made a mistake with someone you love, don't let it sit unopened on the counter for years, the way I let that letter sit for 12 days. And if someone in your life has truly changed, really changed, not just apologized, don't be afraid to leave the door open, even just a little. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't watching someone lose everything. Sometimes it's watching them slowly become someone better. If this story reminded you of your own family, I'd be honored if you shared it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you'd like more stories about family, forgiveness, and finding strength after betrayal, stay close. There are more coming. Thank you for spending this time with me.